It's a bit,
Are they already on?
yeah, works.
Beautiful.
It works, yeah. So, David, why don't you introduce yourself just to begin with, because I will not do the best job over here.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm Dave McEwen. I am performing the duties of the DoD CISO and the Deputy CIO for cybersecurity. Previously, I actually did this job for 4 years, and now I'm just back performing the duties of. Total tenure of about 5 years in the seat doing CISO work. Very interested in supply chain. You may have caught the Secretary's memo a while back saying that we do not want to bring in hardware and software from adversarial nations. So we've been working hard at understanding throughout all of our processes where we could put checks and balances in place to limit that exposure to adversarial software and hardware. Today we're going to talk a little bit about software.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah. So, as you mentioned, so there is a big spotlight on the software supply chain security, right? So how do you see the risks have evolved over the past maybe 3 to 5 years in this particular space? If you can, let's start from there.
Yeah, I don't know that the risks really evolved. I think they were always there. You know, we've got the open source community, which generally does a pretty good job of crowdsourcing their software, but we've seen situations evolve there where they get down to one developer who's sick and they hand off the reins to somebody else who's an adversary, and they introduce malicious logic, and next thing you know, that malicious logic is everywhere. It is something that we've kind of taken for granted and trusted, operating system software, other software, for decades. We just treat it as good. It went through testing. It went through the DevSecOps pipelines. It must be good, right? But really it wasn't, right? We do need to apply the zero trust principles to the whole software development life cycle. And even after it's fielded, keep not trusting it. We have to not trust it, no matter where it came from. Always be checking, always be putting other mitigating things around it to make sure that we catch anomalous behaviors and things like that. But yeah, I think it's always been here. We're finally paying attention to it.
Great. So on that topic of open source and the crowdsourced software, so it's complex. The modern software stack is quite complex, and in order to introduce features faster, developers tend to include all sorts of open source components in it, right? So how is DoD adopting with the procurement and the actual checking process to address all the dependencies and any risks that are hidden?
Yeah, I think for open source software, we haven't landed on a good policy there yet. We've had some incidents lately where open source software modules have been exposed that they're maintained by a single Russian developer, which is not a good scenario. It's not a good scenario to have a single developer, period, let alone have somebody who lives in Russia and is affiliated with agencies in the Russian government. So taking advantage of all the tools that we can in our DevSecOps pipelines and intelligence and understanding better basically all the components of software that we're ingesting, open source or not. It's been postulated that, you know, when something flags in the DevSecOps environment that it is a single developer or it's maintained in a country that's adversarial, that we should look at alternatives. And those alternatives could be rewrite the whole entire module. Some of these modules are used pervasively, like everywhere. So it is hard to go out there and completely rewrite it. The other thing is, can we introduce our own people into that development pipeline? In other words, take part in that open source development to add as extra checks and balances as that open source software is developed and then published. The other thing is, what other mitigating factors can we put in place to detect or limit the exposure of that software? Closed networks, containers that are built with the right checks and balances, and application firewalls employed to stop the application from beaconing out or something beaconing in to get to that. So we're looking at all of those alternatives. Right now, I would say, we're still exposed, and we need help in uncovering all of these things and figuring out how to cope with them as we go forward. But open source is a special kind of problem. The open source community is very good and very diligent about finding things. There was a module recently that malicious logic got introduced into, and a Microsoft developer was able to uncover that malicious logic before it got deployed worldwide. Another activity is, we do the code testing. I mean, you do see the code in open source. You may not be able to get through every line of it, but you have the ability to look at all the code, so you can look through it, look for malicious logic. I think open source software, because of its community, is pretty reliable. But after you've tested that, never ingest the latest and greatest from the internet, right? Always work it out where you're testing that software, looking into it as much as you possibly can, putting those mitigating factors in place, and then pin that. And that's what everybody uses until the next version comes out, and it can be adequately tested before it's deployed pervasively. That automatic ingest is a failed paradigm, no matter whether it's open source software or commercial software. We've had numerous times where we've been bitten by, here you go, you're getting the automated feed, and it takes everything down. Like, you should always stage it, test it, pin it, and then everybody start adopting it from there.
Okay, so just one more question, just extending that. So in case if vulnerabilities or weaknesses appear after some software has been deployed into the production, so how is DOW or DOD now thinking about rapidly actually blocking that particular issue or something like that, right? So how are you addressing the patching side?
Yeah, historically, with Log4j, for instance, we didn't know where many of those modules were. We didn't have the ability to decompose the software. We had to go to vendors to ask them, did you use this? Did you use this variant of Log4j? And how do we know whether or not it's in our software? So I think that, and also SolarWinds drove the development of EO 14028, which says, do SSDF, a secure software development framework, DevSecOps type of an environment, with some insider threat monitoring, with the right level of commits, with the right governance. I think that's important that you have that in place. And then another offshoot of that EO was the SBOM.
Yeah.
The SBOM was mandated. However, there was no contract wording to push it out to the community to tell them to do it. So it's been kind of a band of the willing where companies are giving us the SBOMs. They view them as important. In our own software development environments, we're certainly generating them, and they become part of the ATO package that we can see what's baked in to that particular software build. And then we're asking for vendors to do the same thing to us. We recently announced Swift, which is software fast track, and the goal there is to ask vendors who really want to get an ATO quickly to give us all of these things. Show us that you're doing an SSDF when you're doing your development of your software, you have good processors for that. Show us that you have an SBOM, and it's been verified that those are the components. If you have a way to lock down the software, we call those STIGs or SRGs, give us that so we can test it and make sure that that does adequately lock down the software in the operational environment. So as much as possible, we're front-loading what we want from the vendors as far as software goes, so they can drop it off at our front door, and then we can inspect it and check it. And then the new thing that we want to do, rather than an APL, is issue an assess-only ATO. So we take all those artifacts, we do a little bit of our own work. Some of that is doing a foci look through tools like Exeger or whatever, a third-party look at the supply chain risk from a foreign ownership, control, and influence perspective. Drop all of those things off. Somebody on the inside takes a look at it and says, this software is good, and we issue it an ATO. Mm-hmm. And then that company, over time, if they mod it, they give us new artifacts that show it's still good, and we keep that ATO up to date. And then in the system, anybody out there that wants to use this software, before, the way we used to do it, people would look in EMAS, they would see an approved product on a list of approved products for that environment. No rigor behind it, just said it was approved, right? What we're trying to do is get to that rigor and provide those artifacts that show that we check this software out in the following ways and it's good to go. On the other side of the story, if we decide that we don't want anybody to use that, we can issue a DATO that through reciprocity, you go into EMAS, you look up that software and it says DATO. And all the facts will be laid out for them there why we recommend not using that. So this will have tie-ins to the FASC, the Federal Acquisition Security Council. When they do exclusion and removal orders, we can put those inside of EMAS and alert everybody by saying this is not an approved product for the following reasons, and they can see the artifacts. So that's what we're working on there.
Great. Thanks a lot. Yeah. How is AI changing the world now, in your side?
AI is something we all need to embrace and dive in on. It's being mandated that we all start leveraging it in whatever way we can. We're seeing on the Swift side, for instance, all of those artifacts that are being dropped off at the front door, we can leverage AI to sort through those very quickly and come to a conclusion that the human can spend a lot less time figuring out, is this what we're looking for or not, or are there any concerns? But certainly, as we're looking to blow up RMF, which, by the way, is not get rid of it, it's to change the focus of it from compliance and checklists and humans to cybersecurity and cyber survivability and automation. AI will play a big part there, too, to help us continuously monitor, help validate that the system is secure at inception, and then maintain it secure over time. We can leverage AI in that regard.
And if the vendors are, depending on the AI models, what is the recommendation that you have for the vendors who are depending? Because, like, for example, my own product, which is there, we turn off AI just because we can actually deploy it in some of the networks, but there is really no good guidance on how to start using AI in our products to deliver a much effective.
That's a great question. So one, don't use DeepSeek.
Of course.
All right. Two, we welcome the use of AI that is developed in the U.S. And maintained in the SSDFs of the U.S. manufacturers. So I would welcome the use of it. We have been treating it very much like it's a traditional RMF problem. It's about protecting the data and the networks, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So we would either want this to be hosted in a cloud that is certified by us, and the JWCC contracts, we've been adding in AI capabilities over time and certifying them. They're there for people to use. Or if you're going to do a one-off inside of one of our mission partner boundaries, let's say the Army or the Air Force, that it just be U.S. and get an ATO. We do block access to the commercial AI models, so if what you're building is going to leverage that in any way, no thank you. We want our data to stay inside of our boundary. So that's really the biggest criteria. Even access to ChatGPT and some of the other large language models, we allow people to go to that, to the commercial one, but we do not, we block uploads of any documentation coming from inside of our boundary. It's about protecting that data. We want you to get the answers, because there's a lot of good open source answers out there, but again, protect our data.
Okay, that's good to know. So both on the usage side of the AI as well as from the developer's point of view, if they want to actually access the AI knowledge, you have policies around both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I could see a huge need for this to be in the software development pipeline to sort of turbocharge the developers' capabilities, generate code for them, answer questions. We want to leverage it too on the active defense side to turbocharge your active defenders, where they can kind of go in there and get answers and even search over their own terrain to get answers about what's going on and what's the best course of action. So there's I mean, this is like Frank's Red Hot Sauce. We should be trying to put AI on anything that we can, right? So,
Yeah, I know. Okay, that's good. Okay, so just looking ahead, right? So what are the policy or the technology changes you guys are thinking about bringing, which will have a much greater impact on strengthening the software supply chain, right?
we still don't know what good looks like. I sit on the FASC, Federal Acquisition and Security Council. I've sat on there for 5 years. We just did our first product where we said we recommend removal and exclusion, and so we're working through that. So I think we got our processes worked out. But I think what we did in the DoD, we understood the importance of supply chain risk management. We're certainly following all the DevSecOps guidance that I talked about earlier for EO 14028. But as far as sorry, I'm spacing.
So the policies of usage and acquisition for the future, do you see any more changes that are coming up we should be aware of, right?
Yeah, I think we want to define what good is. I think that's where I lost my train of thought. So there's been companies that have come back from the FASC, and even inside the department, we have the ability to ban foreign companies that are influenced by adversarial countries. They come back to us and they say, well, what if I fix this or what if I fix that? Like, we had to figure out, like, how do we get from high risk to acceptable risk? And then we said, well, what is acceptable risk? Like, we've put out a lot of guidance saying do scrim, and we gave a bunch of pilot money to services and organizations and said, go do scrim. And guess what they're doing? They're all doing scrim. Everybody's scrim looks different. Like, I don't know who's not accepting products or whether they're just saying, well, that's interesting. I looked at all of this, and there's foreign adversaries, and there's open source modules that are maintained in China, and then they just move on with life. I don't know what their policy is, right? We need to define what is good and what is acceptable and what the red lines are. If you detect this while you're doing scrim, stop. Tell us, we'll issue the DATO, or at least work through the process to issue the DATO, but you do not have to field that product because it fails some of the checks. So right now, it's kind of wild, wild west. People are doing scrim. Mm-hmm. We got to get better at defining what good looks like.
Especially when they find some exceptions over there, instead of just allow it, they should report it back to you and then go for the DA.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it becomes just like authorizing officials. Some are soup Nazis, and others are overly permissive and allow everything onto the network. So we need to define for them what the red lines are.
Okay. So any other thoughts on the zero trust side of the world? Typically, zero trust is linked with the runtime side of the world from a network point of view.
Yep.
So from a software usage point of view, what does a zero trust policy look like, right, from a DoD?
Yeah, I think this is a good fit with zero trust. One of our pillars is the application layer. Mm-hmm. I think as a mitigation factor, zero trust wrapping around, even after we test the software, we do everything, we've got all the artifacts, we give it an ATO, and we deploy it, right? It still has risks, right? We have to continuously monitor that software. And if something blows up, wouldn't it be best if that blew up and its blast radius was contained inside of a segment that, zero trust is about segmentation of these applications and the data. So we want to employ all those same principles. And wouldn't it be great if we could log all the activities of the software that we brought in there so that we can see if it's behaving anomalous, right? So being able to map back the network traffic going to and from that, understanding what ports and protocols, right? Monitoring that and not trusting that software. Always be looking at its behaviors, even if you've already blessed it off as good. There's no stamp of approval and then you forget about it for the next 10 years anymore. We've got to constantly monitor the software.
Absolutely. And I think AI will go a lot way to actually help you defend and find this anomalous traffic. Okay, that's good. So that is it. So it was really great talking to you and finding out all these great things. right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And
Thanks, sir.
hopefully you guys are keeping pace with everything that we're trying to do in the department. We definitely need help. I've expressed some of the areas where we need more help today. So feel free to reach out and provide us with the good ideas that you have and see if we can work together on moving forward here on supply chain risk management. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.